Hello, friends. I'm Leigh Brown, and this is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. Today, you're going to get some insight into what it's like to be a newly licensed early career realtor. I know a lot of my episodes, we've talked to the old guard and those of us that are basically just worn down to a nub. But today we've got Emma Lowery. She is bright, cheerful, confident, and you're going to enjoy this episode. So I'll see you on the other side. You're listening to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. You'll be amazed at all these wild but true situations that others have found themselves in. Because on this show, you'll hear uncensored, unbelievable stories from the world of real estate. I'm Leigh Brown. Let's dive right in.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here and chat with you today.
I know. And now, since you work for the famous Marti Hampton, you can go hold over her head that you've been on my show and she hasn't yet. So that will be great fun.
It'll be a great bargaining chip for me in the office. I'm excited to have that feather in my cap. Exactly.
You do work for one of the most impressive and powerful women in real estate, which is a great place to be an early career realtor. So why don't you go ahead and start off by telling our viewers and our listeners where you're located, a little bit about Emma's background, give them some insights.
Yeah, sure. So like Leigh was saying, I work with the Marti Hampton team. Marti Hampton is a powerhouse out in the Triangle area. So we're out based in Raleigh and we service all the surrounding areas. So the whole Triangle, then all the suburbs that are popping up on the fringes, things like Garner and Franklinton and places like that. And Marti Hampton is great. She has an established reputation out here. So it's wonderful to learn from her. My background is in events. So I was in college and I was majoring in psychology and I was in a lot of labs and I was itching for a way to be more creative. I have never been, true academic in the way that, I want to sit down and analyze data all day long. And so I was longing for a way to be more creative. And I took an internship with a wedding planner. So I did wedding planning for a while. I've actually just concluded doing that. I did that for about 4 years and learned so much that I feel like is actually really relevant to what I do now in real estate. So I was a wedding planner for a while, and I also did events for a pharmaceutical marketing company. So working with some pharmaceutical brands and things like that. So yeah, in January, I took the plunge to take my pre-licensing exam, and here I am.
It is kind of fascinating how other professional lives overlay with real estate so seamlessly, because it is less about the actual physical house and more about the psychology of what's happening with the buyers and the sellers and the other agents, and then what's happening with the marketplace that pulls in the data information, but a way you have to convey the data. Because if you think about it, what you were dying in labs trying not to do, like I can't sit here and just chunka through numbers. That's okay.
Right.
We have Twitter for that now. People who like to evaluate
data
aren't scientists, so it works out fine. Which is also like real estate. Everybody wants to tell you what they know about real estate from their third cousin once removed who once sold the house 45 years ago. May or may not be relevant in today's market. And before we move on, hey, Garner, she wasn't saying you didn't exist a few years ago. Emma's just saying you weren't hot until recently. And, some of us are peaking early and some peak later. And that's just what's happening in those smaller towns on the
That's outside, exactly right.
Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. Because if you're not from North Carolina, the triangle that Emma's referring to is Raleigh, which is our state capital, home of NC State. Chapel Hill, the home of the first state university in the nation, Carolina, 1789.
Proud alum.
South Carolina, y'all ain't Carolina. And then there's Durham, which is Duke, also known as the University of New Jersey in Durham. And so with that being said, Emma, I would love to know, so when you landed in pre-licensing class, what was your impression of the information that you were offered? Did you find it to be fascinating, boring, helpful, dreadful, or a combination of all of those things? Tell us about what that license process looks like, because a lot of our viewers and listeners have probably entertained in the back of their mind becoming a realtor. And so we don't often are highly seasoned realtors on the show. We don't often get to hear from somebody who's coming out of the gates fresh. And I'd love to hear what it looks like in 2022.
Yes. So in 2022, I feel like the landscape is a little bit different just because we were, and even more so in a few years prior, just prime COVID time, right? So everyone's doing this virtually. And I opted for, when I committed to doing real estate, I was just ready. I just had decided, and I'm one of those people that once I know something, I know it, and I want to bring thought to action. And so I investigated, pre-licensing and realized that there wasn't going to be another virtual class held for a few weeks. And that was too long to wait for me. So I did fully self-paced. So I got to say, that module, that format is not known for being the most engaging thing ever. So it was tedious. It was time consuming too. I'll say that, when you, it's 75 hours that you have to have in North Carolina. Well, I blew through 75 hours and had way more to go. So it was definitely a long process for me. Well, it took about 2 months, but I was really, really dedicated to it. I invested about as much free time as I possibly could into it. So it took me about 2 months, and, the information, every once in a while, there'd be something that I got really interested in. I loved learning about like CMA analysis and things like that. But then there's a lot of stuff in there that's just legal. And it's just, you got to know it. And it's important to know, but it's not riveting, but it has to be taught. So I went through it and knew in the back of my mind too, anyone that's entertaining this idea has probably already heard at least once that what you're learning in that class is not really reflective of what you're doing day to day. Like you're saying, Leigh, it's much more people focused. It's much more, your people skills, I think, should be one of the sharpest tools in your tool belt. It's interacting with people and things like that. So I'm excited.
Marti probably told you the same thing I tell people when they're taking that class is, get through the class, and then I'll teach you what you need to know to actually conduct real estate, because it's not as relevant as it could be to the actual neighbor who's buying and selling, which is why I'm extra glad that you came in with that psychology background, because reading people is not necessarily innate for people, but it can be a learned skill, and it just depends on what you pour into it. But before we go to your next steps, I got to point out that Emma told y'all a giant secret about your exam and your license if you caught it. And that's that too many people look at the class and say, 75 hours, I'm going to log it, I'm going to get through, it'll be fine. But to pass that class, the reason a lot of people fail the first time, second time, third time, they didn't invest any time outside the 75 hours. And the older you are, and some of y'all that are watching and listening are medium like me, you're not nearly as young as Emma. And you're further away from school, and the further you are away from school, the more study you actually have to put in to retain it long enough to take the exam. So read the book. If you're taking the class, read the book. And I don't care what state you're in, read the book. That's the biggest mistake most people make. So I hope you're catching that little nugget right there and remembering it for when you decide to go for your license. And for those of y'all that are old guard like me, you're sitting back there on the other side going, amen, sister, that's right. You should work harder at this, because there's so much more to learn after you get your license.
Yeah.
So once you got your license, Emma, you landed with somebody who's incredibly well-known, highly established brand, well-known for being definitely a go-getter in a marketplace where it's incredibly competitive. And so, of course, we're recording this in June of 22 when the markets are starting to go through some shifting and stabilizing, but it is still wildly competitive for buyers and definitely still favors sellers heavily. So what was where was the jumping off point for dealing with an actual person who wants to conduct real estate for you? How hard was the transition from, I've been doing things for people, I'm learning things now I've got to go do different things for different people. So talk to us about that jumping off point, that transitioning.
Yeah, you mean like transitioning into the career path and
like actually doing real estate. So going from, I have this piece of paper North Carolina has granted me, they have given me the public trust. It's one of the biggest things about real estate that realtors lose sight of. The state, by virtue of that pocket card, says, we trust you. We trust you, Emma, with every citizen of North Carolina's best interest in real estate. So now that you're holding that pocket card, what did it look like to go into the practice of real estate? What were your first action items, your first steps, your first mentorship, learning, apprenticeship steps? What'd you do?
Yep, I see. So I thought, and I still think that part of the key to me right now being a new agent is to inform myself as much as possible. And as realtors, we have great resources. I know our office uses Keeping Current Matters. It's a database.
Steve. Everybody loves Steve.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So I'm in good company here. That resource is so, so helpful and has been key for me, like it is for all realtors, but, especially in this stage I'm in now to really understand the marketplace. And like you're saying, it's shifting right now. So when I was thinking about becoming in the pre-licensing process, I was listening to podcasts and things like that. And at that point in time, back in February, it was still complete seller's market. Like there was no chance. Like you were going to put in, you're going to be up against, 20 plus offers. You were going to have to go like 50, 60K due diligence and pray. And maybe by a miracle, you somehow were the one selected. So that was kind of the priming I had coming into it. And, that was my expectation, but it's always shifting. So like you said, this is still very much the market that we're in, but I'm learning how to finesse things appropriately. Because as we tiptoe kind of towards a buyer's market where some things that were totally off the table, like having a loan that's not a conventional loan, before I don't think that would have had a chance, at least going off of some of the experiences from other agents in my office. But now we have one person that is under contract with someone with an FHA loan. So right now it's really key, I think, for us all to be very mindful of the shifts and knowing how to educate our buyers and sellers on what the market is doing. Because at the end of the day, we're an advisor. We're supposed to be the experts. So being armed with that knowledge is key.
If you are remotely awake, then you know that we are heading into some really tricky economic times. We have home buyers that have put the kibosh on buying. We have sellers who have found out suddenly their houses aren't dipped in 14 karat gold. And as a realtor, you are still trying to keep up with the business you have and trying to answer questions in the meantime, while also managing sky-high fuel cost at the pump. Never fear, because my new video course is coming out right now. And it's called How to Dominate During a Recession. I've been a realtor for 22 years. My business went up every year during the Great Recession, and it's all because of education. This course is 4 modules. There might even be some bonus content for you. The price is $199. I am delighted to bring this out as quickly as possible because, friends, there's no time like the present to make sure our neighbors are stronger and we protect the American dream. Click on this link, www.dominatethisrecession.com, and I'll see you there. Now, back to this amazing content.
Exactly. And nobody ever gets to stop learning because markets change, consumer behaviors change. Real estate at its core is very similar today that it was 50 years ago, but everything else is so fast. And we have an obligation to go learn as much as we can all the time. So I love that you're in that mindset. And I know that you will stay in that mindset because now you've committed to it forever on YouTube, which holds us all accountable. Okay. In the few months that you have become a full-time practicing realtor, I am dying to know what kind of craziness that you encountered, that you got on the phone or your text thread and said, oh my gosh, this is not what I signed up for, because I think that's what happens to realtors, frankly, at any career stage. They always run into wild scenarios. And so, Emma, what have you seen up in the Triangle market that you said, what?
Well, I think I've gotten a little bit of the smorgasbord at this point. I feel like I've had a taste of everything as far as, every transaction that I'm working on right now is potentially my first in a certain category. So, working through things like, one transaction I'm working on right now is with someone that wants to put a modular home on some land, learning all the issues with that, i.e. like septic tank inspections and, all this stuff. I'm working with someone who wants to do a 1031 exchange. So that's another, which is when someone is an investor and wants to keep their money from hitting their actual bank account and then keeping it retained within their attorney so that it's a way for investors to have some tax advantages. But so trying to, learn to navigate that. So I feel like in the beginning, I have a lot of things that pop up from clients and stuff. That's like, I have that what moment where I'm like, okay, office, anyone who can hear me, what's your recommendation for how to handle this? So yeah, it's how you learn. And I like learning this way, just getting thrown in and figuring it out. So Yeah.
Well, and if you were alone, you'd still be thrown in learning it. And if you were like me, 22 years in, you're still learning it because there's always something new. The key is what you just mentioned. It's having that space where you could say, hey, somebody knows something. And when you land in the right environment, you're going to be so amazed in real estate how many people will delightedly jump in and give all their knowledge and their time, and they never get paid for it. They're just helping you because they know how critical this is to the people who've chosen you and how critical it is to the other side of the transaction. And frankly, I think that's one of the biggest kept secrets in real estate is how willing realtors are to help each other, even when they have no financial benefit on the other side. And obviously, that's part of the reason you're going to be successful because you've landed with people who are going to pour into you. So I would love to know, I mean, obviously, you landed in a tax space and you've landed in a municipal space because you're dealing with septic tanks and permits and wells. That's falling in the municipal piece. Where do you find yourself being really drawn into deep dive learning outside of the transaction? So do you find yourself wanting to really become highly knowledgeable about investor and tax things? Do you want to go all in for, well, you know, we like to say we're number one in the number two business when you're dealing with septic. So do you want to go get deep into septic? Do you want to learn how to handle modulars, luxury, lakefront properties? What piece of the business is drawing your attention right now? Because I think that's also an unexpected part of jumping into real estate is, oh my gosh, there's a zillion angles in the business and you don't have time to learn everything and be an expert, but you can learn a lot. So where do you see yourself wanting to be an expert so far, knowing you've only uncovered a tiny bit of the surface?
Yes, that is so true. I've only touched a little bit of it. And that being said, it's because the thing that I really feel a calling towards, it hasn't come onto my plate yet, but my first love was interior design. I loved it when I was a kid. Every single year for my birthday, I asked to redo my room. And so that would mean I'd pick out a paint color and I'd pick out a new bedspread. And I lived it up for like 2 months until it was time to start concocting my next. Yeah, exactly. Until it was time to start concocting my next room, which I would, wait for my next birthday. So with that piece of, DNA that I've always had, I'm really drawn to flips and to remodels. And I want to be able to build connections with some great contractors that we can walk into a space and guide someone through and talk about these things and be able to guide from from an investment perspective too, what are the things where you're going to get bang for your buck if you're trying to flip this around and put it back on the market, or if, it's your forever home. But that is something that I have just always had in me. It's something I loved about being in the wedding industry too, was seeing that like a vision come to life like that. It's in my DNA. So I'm excited to learn more about that and hopefully become an expert in the remodel and flip space.
And what perfect timing, because whenever the markets move, those opportunities tend to rise to the surface. So let me tell you a little hidden secret about the design side of flipping and remodeling. You're going to be so busy, you won't necessarily have time to go do all the picking out for people. Sherwin-Williams, they have paint consultants in every one of their franchises who will do an hour for free at any house, inside or out, to help you pick colors. And so totally recommend that you go to your nearest Sherwin-Williams store and find out who that person is on staff and make friends with them, because they are actual interior designers. And it doesn't cost us as realtors anything, doesn't cost our clients anything. And another great way to support local business in the community. So then you'll be ready to roll with the hottest colors, even if you don't like the hottest colors. I don't like that red, pink neutral that's hot right now. I'm not into a rose beige, but whatever, somebody likes it somewhere. We'll go back to it at some point.
I know some of these colors are, I'm like, if you're bold, go for it. I have tried with wall color, and I'm a neutral kind of gal with some pops in pillows, etc.
Hey, but that's a great color, like, have a red cup on your counter or something.
Right.
You don't have to paint the walls red.
That's what I'm like Pier 1, also great tip. No, World Market has $13 throw pillows that you can get the color that you might need. But that's a great tip, and that's good for me and for anyone else listening who wants to use that.
Yeah, Marti didn't even know that. And so make sure that you tell her this. And she's going to be like, damn it, Leigh Brown, you've been stuck one over.
I'll come back. I'll come back with that nugget, and she'll be like, shoot.
She's going to be like, wait a minute, I paid somebody all these years? Because if there's anybody that can make a dollar go a long way, it is a smart businesswoman like your leader. And I know that she's going to make sure financially you're in a great space. And so speaking of finances, when you go from a normal job to real estate, you typically go from a paycheck to the unknowns of commission, which means you could have a great month and you could have a nothing burger. And then you could have something that you think is going to be a great month and it completely just disintegrates overnight. How did you prepare yourself to be financially stable while you'd go through this building process of becoming the most amazing realtor ever?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I got to say, shout out to just getting married right before this. So now I'm on a dual income strategy. So I have my husband who has a steady stream of income coming in, which helps a lot when you're, venturing into something like this. The other thing is, I think the classic advice, at least that I saw over and over again on the internet, is to have 6 months of expenses saved up. So we made sure that our savings were in a great space. So, we won't be in trouble for a while. I'm fingers crossed I'm able to pull in some income before we get there. But I think too, for me, there's so much security in having a salary, right? That's one of the pros of having a salary, is that there's security in it. On the flip side, with commission, there is instability. You don't know, you have to work to make it happen. But for me, I think a big thing is I feel like I'm in the right industry. I have confidence in myself and I know that it's going to come. So I think that's been helpful too along the way, because right now I have to be operating on confidence, and trust to some degree. Any entrepreneur does. So that's my phase right now.
That should never go away because again, we're in a changing marketplace. A lot of people might have been in the business for 25 years. And when markets change, their initial reaction is to pull back, to stop doing the work, to stop making phone calls. But when you operate out of that sense of, I've got to go make this happen because it's on me. And we've got 6 months, but I don't want to touch it. And I've got the confidence and houses are selling. So I'm going to go do it. You can actually find yourself pulling ahead of a highly seasoned realtor, regardless of how long you've been in the business, if you're willing to put a smile on and go do the work every day. So perfect timing for you to be coming into this business, perfect timing to take all of that event knowledge and pour it right back into the people you probably served in the wedding business who might need to buy a house. I'm just saying. So if they do want to buy a house from you and they say, I want to help Emma get her business going, I want to bring her my piece of business, how do they reach you?
You can reach me. So I'm with like I said, the Marti Hampton group. I can shout out my email and phone number. So it's Emma, EMMA, Lowery, spelled LOWERY, at Marti Hampton. So MartiHampton.com. Also, feel free to give me a call or shoot me over a text. My number is 336-413-5566.
And for all of you who didn't write anything down or your brain jumped to Lowry seasoned salt, which is the wrong spelling of Lowry. Don't worry, because I put all of the contact information in the show notes for this episode. So you can go connect with her. And if you're watching or listening to this and you're thinking about getting into real estate, what better person to ask than somebody who just got in? Or maybe you're trying to figure out how to structure a team for success. Talk to a team member, because the Martys of the world will share, but there's a different set of insight that comes from the Emmas. And so make sure you connect with her for all your triangle real estate needs. Emma, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us a little bit of insight into the early career realtor's head.
Yeah. Thanks, Leigh. It was great to talk with you today.
All right, guys, say something nice about Emma in the comments for this episode. And meanwhile, go have a great day. I'll see you next time. As always, I'm so super thrilled that you joined in for more crazy shit. And if you're a realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular human being who happens to have an unbelievable story that you need to tell the world about, or frankly, you just need to one-up the story you just heard, then make sure to DM me on Instagram at Leigh Thomas Brown, or tweet me at Leigh Brown, or frankly, any social network where you hang out. I'm there. And if you had some fun, then you totally want to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.